What is this? A small Nikon? It's a camera from the Nikon 1 system, Nikon's first attempt at a mirrorless system, launched in 2011, and it was discontinued in 2018 when they launched their Z system. But what is the Nikon 1 system, and can it be used for anything today? I'll have a look at that in this video, the first in a series on the Nikon 1 system. Welcome back to my channel, this time for the first of 5 videos looking at cameras from the abandoned Nikon 1 system. In this video we'll have a look at one of the first cameras from this system, this Nikon 1 V1, and in later videos we'll look at some of the later cameras from that line of cameras. Among others the Nikon 1 V3. Recently I released a video with images from Nepal shot on a Nikon 1V1 that you can watch that video up here, but I'll also leave a link in the description so you don't have to leave this video. This camera system spanned 11 different cameras, all with the same sensor size, grouped into 4 different lines. The S line, which was the entry-level cameras, the J line, which was the middle of the tier, and the V line, which was one of the most feature-rich of the bunch. The fourth was the AW line, which only one model was launched. It's very special as it was the first rugged mirrorless camera capable of being taken 15 meters underwater. Except for the AW that is special, the lines are differentiated in the following way. The V line has built-in EVF, except for the V3, which has a click-on viewfinder that you click into the hot shoe. And they also have electronic and mechanical shutter, so unlike the L and S and AV line that only has electronic shutter. We'll come back to the oddities of the V3 in a separate review of that, as there's really too much to this camera. The J line has somewhat fewer physical controls than the V line, and no EVF, whereas the S line is very basic and doesn't have many physical controls at all. A total of 13 lenses for the tiny Nikon 1 mount were produced by Nikon, all with autofocus and ranging from 18mm focal length equivalents to a staggering 810mm. On top of this, Samyang made a few lenses for this mount. They are also sold under the Rokinon name. At launch of the system, all cameras were equipped with a 10 megapixel CMOS sensor, which is the sensor in this Nikon 1V1 that I'm reviewing today. The unusual thing is that the sensor size is only 1 inch or 13.2 times 8.8 millimeters in size. That's around half the size of a 4/3 sensor and only a quarter of the DX sensor, Nikon's APS-C sensor. I have reviewed other cameras with a 1 inch sensor, and especially one of these cameras delivers amazing images. That's the Sony RX10 Mark IV. I'll put a link in the description. Nikon named the sensor size CX, so they have their small CX, then the APS-C sized DX, and finally their full frame FX. As you can understand, I am not so afraid of this sensor size, but it was one of the weak points of the Nikon 1 system, at least in the beginning. But also one of its strengths. Let's make it plain. The 1 inch sensor gives a crop factor compared to full frame of 2.7, so a normal lens for this system comparable to 50mm on a full frame camera would be around 18.5mm, and Nikon made exactly that. An 18.5mm with an 8.5 f8.5 lens, which could be called the nifty 50 of this system. Now that may sound like you could create exactly the same look as with the 50mm f1.1 on a full frame, but that's not the case. To get the same blur, you would actually have to use an 18.5mm with a 2.7 stops larger aperture. This is an 18.5mm with an f-stop around 0.7. Such a lens doesn't exist, so blurring the backgrounds is difficult on a system with a 1-inch sensor. But if you're looking for large depth of field, for instance in a landscape shot, then the system can give you just that. So for some shooting sceneries with large depth of field is beneficial. For us it's a big challenge. But the sensor size has other implications. I have already showed you the lens corresponding to the Nifty 50, and did you notice how small it is? That is exactly one of the main reasons I bought into this system, to see if it was something for my travel use. I recently took the V1 on a trip to Nepal, visiting among other places Everest Base Camp, and the images from that trip are mostly gorgeous, though in a few there are some flaws. I look at these lenses, they are small and they're very light. For instance, the 18.5mm f1.8 weighs only 70 grams. This 10 to 30mm corresponding to 27 to 81mm in full frame terms weighs only 150 grams. And my telephoto zoom that I doesn't have here, corresponding to around 80 to 300mm, weigh a mere 180 grams. The longest focal length you can get in this system is incredible. The 70 to 300mm, a lens I haven't owned or tried, but it corresponds to 189mm to 810mm, and the weight of this lens is only 550 grams. If you're already a Nikon shooter, there is good news, as lenses can be used with an adapter, the FT1 adapter from Nikon. If there are electronic contacts on your lens, you'll get the EXIF information into your images, and if the lens is of the type with a built-in focus motor, even autofocus works, like it does on my Tamron 90mm lens. When using the collapsible lenses, which both the 10 to 30mm and the 30 to 110mm are, you can actually turn on the camera just by making the lens ready for shooting. That is a handy feature, as it means you don't have to do two separate things before shooting. Just make the lens ready and the camera will be there with you. The system has received criticism due to the fact that although implementing small camera bodies, some Micro Four Thirds cameras were actually as small despite having a larger sensor. I think it's a fair critique when focusing only on the camera body, but if you factor in the lenses, I believe that there is a size and weight difference in favor of the Nikon One system. In this regard, one system that is worth a mention, also a system that did not survive, is the Samsung NX. This system even implements an APS-C sized sensor, and some of the lenses are really small despite the larger sensor. I'll come back at a later point with a review of this system and talk about why it didn't survive. But for now, just say that I believe it to be one of the technically most successful systems. And definitely I'm not the only one to say so. I have heard others say the same. Samsung, please come back. Now back to the Nikon One system. To conclude the lens selection, if you are after blurry backgrounds, you will usually not be happy with the Nikon One system. You can create some background blur. But if you look for large depth of field, this system could be for you. And if small weight and huge telephoto reach is for you, this system is really a good proposition. But the Nikon One system has other advantages, one of which stems also from the small sensor. The readout from this sensor is super fast, and shutter curtains move only a short distance, all of which makes fast 10 frames per second in this first generation, and even a blistering 60 frames per second in later systems possible. Nikon also implemented a very fast electronic shutter in this system, So you could utilize down to 1/16,000th of a second. Again, a feature where Nikon was at the front in development at this time. The small lenses also have small elements, so the movement of them during autofocus is very fast, making the autofocus extremely snappy and precise. Maybe not in the first model, but at least in the later models it was very good. As you can see, there are also many advantages to the small sensor, but I have to mention one more downside to it. The high ISO on a small sensor definitely sucks, though I'm not so unhappy with the look of the images. At least I actually like the output from the Nikon 1V1 even at higher ISO, though not at the highest values. Look at some of these images. They have a very painterly look to them, and in many situations I really like that. The noise doesn't look so digital, it looks more like a film grain, and I certainly like this very much. Many consider anything beyond 400 ISO as completely unusable on this system, or at least in the first models in the system. Whereas I have frequently shot at 800. There's noise, but unless you are going to pixel peep or make huge prints, you probably wouldn't notice. Due to advancements in the sensor technology, this issue, despite also receiving a higher resolution, became less important with later generations of cameras, like the V3 that I am going to review in a later episode. The V1 was a pretty sleek body design with only a small bump where the viewfinder is. There are a few buttons to control the camera, but the mode dial is just too limited and only offers 4 modes, of which one, motion snapshot, is just too quirky. It shoots one image together with a small video sequence. Every time you press the shutter, one image and a small video sequence. And the most annoying about this mode dial is that it often turns inadvertently when you take it up or down a back. That means I take the camera to the eye just to realize that I'm in another mode than I want. On that I may have missed some shots. Also, the rocker on the back for changing aperture and zooming in the viewing mode is a bit awkward to use. And too many other things are hidden in the menus, which is unusual for a top-line camera. Another compromise, probably due to size limitations, is the hot shoe, which is a Nikon 1 only design. There's no way to use a standard Nikon speed light with this system, and there's only a few flashes available for this system. Furthermore, you can't use any kind of remote trigger with the system, as no one made a compatible trigger. So all in all, what is my verdict on this camera? I love the size of the camera. I like the built-in viewfinder, the snappy autofocus, and I love the size of the lenses. And for telephoto shooting, the crop factor of 2.7 makes it possible to shoot at extremely long focal lengths without the lenses getting huge. Though the crop factor and thus the sensor size is also part of the downsides to this camera, it's too difficult to get a nice background blur, and that is something I want when shooting portraits on my travels. The sensor size also makes it impossible to use very high ISO values, but I mentioned I like 800, so in low light I struggle to get decent images. And though many of the lenses have image stabilization built in, I would have preferred IBIS or in-body image stabilization. None of the cameras in the entire Nikon 1 lineup has IBIS. I'll come back with my review of the later models, including the V2, the V3, and the not only weather-sealed but waterproof AV1. The last review will be of the final model in the series, the J5, and in that review I will also discuss why I think that the system never received much attention and why it didn't sell well. Despite that fact, I think it was an important step for Nikon, as they learned a lot from this first foray into the mirrorless world, without compromising sales of their, at the time, still well-selling DSLRs. I hope you liked this first look into the Nikon 1 system and my review of the Nikon 1V1. So stay tuned for the next episodes, and please subscribe to my channel and give this video a like. That'll make it much more easy for others to find this channel and also make content for you. Thank you very much for this time, and see you soon again, I hope.